Again,
Yeah.
if we're focused on dollars and cents, right? And so I wouldn't trade the cage baby in for anything in the
Well,
world,
I
in the
mean,
garden world. But I think we have to consider all of that, and that kind of goes back to your goal, right? And how strongly you feel about being in the red versus being in the black when it comes to your finances around the garden. And that helps dictate where you're going to head.
I think I remember the cost of the cage baby, but I'm not going to say it because I don't want to display your finances out there. Um,
Well, that was all borrowed money back then.
but I mean, if you think about it though, and I mean, really look into it, like you bought the cage baby. Um, yeah, you had it built, and you had a plan for it. The plan did not work out quite like you wanted. Is that safe to say? I'm not trying to
Yeah, and
rehash anything, and we can just leave it at that.
no, for context for the people that weren't around, this is before I gave in to the concept of crop rotation. And the reality is, I could plant tomato plants there for another 10 years straight and may not have issues, but that's just not the way that I've decided to garden.
Right.
So I had a tragic year of a lot of sickness in my tomato plants in the cage baby in 22. And without like 100% evidence, just intuition and experience, it felt like that garden soil needed a break from growing that particular type of crop. And I have since had success over those off tomato years. Ironically, though, we're returning to tomatoes. So, let's hope we're not foreshadowing any tragedies again this year.
Well, I
There will
mean,
be tomatoes in the cage, baby.
this is how you learn, right? But what I was getting at is that you have that space, but then you turn it into, here's the key word here, multi-use space. Okay.
Hmm.
So I have a general rule in my garden. I don't use it or buy it unless I can get multiple uses out of it. And you can put that in any perspective you want, any terms. You know, I can use a shovel to dig soil and I can use it to hammer a nail. Something as easy as that. Or I can build a cage, baby, to grow tomatoes and then use it to protect all of my other crops that need to be protected from squirrels and all that other stuff.
Hmm.
So, across the board, like that's what I try and do in my garden. And that's been a really big money saving venture. So I brought up the pond. We built the pond. That was money. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Labor intensive, but financially it wasn't as bad. But there's a purpose behind that. And so we have bees and we plan to grow to help feed the bees so we can get more honey so we can make more money. So, there's all of that, and the water will provided for them will help them to cool the hives and all that stuff. But, you know, it's a multi-use situation here. We get to enjoy it, obviously, but then we've planned this thing out to benefit us in another way. And
Hmm.
so, when you get down to it, there's a lot of things that you can do to set yourself up to save money in your garden. And really what that comes down to, and when you break it down to the core of the onion, excuse me, it's all about, you save money in the garden, you save money in the food bill. End of story. I mean, that's how it works. So if we look at it that way, what are a few ways that we know, Batavia, you and I both know from experience, from experience, that will absolutely save money in the garden? Like, what are those key points?
My first contribution is going to be bulk purchases.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
So,
If you're
so
purchasing for new spaces or topping off your bed, soil is a really good example. Depending on what you're building for your garden, compost could be an example. A third example could be mulch, depending on again on what you're using.
yeah,
Um, the bulk buy is not a trap; like that's a real thing.
yeah, absolutely. You buy in bulk, you get a cheaper price. First of all,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I mean, you can take this and break it down to whatever level you want, but and then you spend less time going to the store. You don't go to the store,
Mhm.
you don't spend the gas, you don't
Mhm.
walk in the store, you don't buy anything else. So like
Yep.
I buy all my fertilizers in the wintertime. They're usually on sale, and buying things on sale is obviously part of it. But I have all of my fertilizer for the entire year plus to get me
Mhm.
through. And I get it cheaper. I mean, I looked in there, like I went in there one day and I had to buy, I don't know what I was doing. Oh, I was testing out a bag of soil. I wanted to see how it would do. So I bought like a small 1 pound bag. It was $9. Figured out I liked it, went back, bought a 30 pound bag for $23. You do the math. You know what I mean? Like it
Mhm.
works out. So absolutely buy in bulk. My number one is, and it's not by nobody's surprise, it's starting your own seeds.
Mhm.
I mean, clear as day. There's no better way to save money in a garden because for the same price that you can buy, no, for half the price that you can buy one pepper plant, you can grow 50 pepper plants, you know? And if
So
you factor in the containers and the soil and stuff like that, then you can get, you know, a, a quarter of the cost of it. You know what I mean? Like if you really, and I know that's where you were going and you were excited to go there, but that's part of it too. Like you have to factor that in into all of this, you know, and so you can still come way, way ahead by starting your own seeds.
so I'm actually look at Mr. I know this is where you're going. I actually was gonna go 2 places. One was there, but the other was even if you start basic, direct sowing, right? So the only cost that you have there would be the cost of the seed, right? So immediately, you're going to save money if you buy a package of seeds. Check us out. We got cucumber seeds and direct sow them compared to you buying a cucumber plant from the store, right? Then the second part of this is what you were trying to touch on in anticipation of my feedback is very similar to the startup cost of a garden, your garden layout, the infrastructure. There is a level of startup costs for starting seeds, and you will very likely not replace the shelving unit that you have yet then, right? Like that's the thing that you'll be using. So year 2 and 3 and 4, it's paid for itself already, right? Again, that goes back to the attitude that you're taking when you're looking at this. You may decide that you don't have the space and or you don't want to spend the monies on starting things indoors. There is your favorite joke. There is the winter sowing method, right? Like people do that. People swear by it and they're successful with it, right? So there are ways. Again, you just have to stick with it long enough to figure out what's your way.
Yeah. And I mean, just to take a second to talk to the person out there who doesn't start their own seeds and is curious, um, direct sowing seeds, you know, direct sowing green beans, peas, squash, melons, all of these crops are, I mean, it's a great way to get started because if you can direct sow them in the ground, then you can sow them in a small pot next to your garden outside and start them that way. And that's a very good kicker. You go into, you mentioned my seed starting shelf. Um, when I purchased that and built it, you know, built it out. I've got videos on YouTube and stuff all about it. And I have another one. I've got some grow lights that a company wants me to review. So we're gonna get those, and hopefully I can get you guys a discount on it. But I thought real long and hard about that purchase as well because
Mhm.
again, it's weird, but it's another $300 setup. You know, by the time everything was said and done. But I looked at it and I said, well, what am I going to get out of this? You know, I could do something cheaper or something. And I looked at it and I said, well, the amount of seeds I can grow on it, you know, I mean, this year, I think we've started close to 1,000 seeds on the seed shelf right next to me. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see it in the corner. Um, I mean, you can do the math at $4 a seed or a plant. That's $4,000 worth of seeds, and that's just a rough. If you go across the board, roughly they're about $4 a piece. If you average it out. So I mean, and that's just in 1 year, and this is like the fourth year I've used this. And that was only in the fall. From during the winter into spring, that's how many seeds we started on it. So you can see, like, yeah, it absolutely starts to add up. And but again, it hurt to do that. And I know, and I'm not trying to sit here and be like, you just got to dig in your pockets and dig in the couch and get your change out and do all that, make it happen. If you really cared, you'd do it. What I'm saying is, like, if you can do it, you should absolutely do it. But I am also, and the older I get, which is terrible that I'm getting older. I wish I was getting younger, kind of. I've realized too that setting it up right will set you up for success in the future, because we go back to what Batavia was saying earlier, about like the mistakes and stuff like that. Well, mistakes do cost you, but in the long term, just like with the garden, those mistakes will save you dramatically if you pay attention to it and you change it. If
Mhm.
you're growing broccoli every spring and it bolts every spring and you keep doing the same thing, I I'm sorry, I don't have any sympathy, because you're not learning from your mistake. But if you do it and then you're like, man, I got to do something different, and then you start working on it and changing it and doing more and more. Like this year, I put all that urea in my garden, and I so close to smoked my whole broccoli bed. It
Mm.
all came back. Like, I took from my lesson and I figured out what to do, and I've turned it around. You can go look on YouTube. The broccoli bed is stunning right now. I can't believe it's as good as it is. So you look at that and you say, that mess up in the long run is going to save us lots and lots of money,
Mhm.
and so we just keep moving in that right direction. But I think you got to be very cautious about what you purchase too. We've joked a lot, like, how many times have you bought a plant and left it in the pot and it just died? Like,
Yeah.
that's something that you shouldn't be doing at all. That's like the number one way to save money right there. You buy it, you plant it. You know what I mean? Which,
Mhm.
have you gotten any better at that?
I'm much better at that.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a hard process
Well,
though.
a part of it is because I'm buying much less as well, so I buy more flower transplants than I do vegetable transplants now. So I just have less to be wasteful with. So there's that. Um There I probably I probably have more waste in the house plants that I can't resist from buying again, that I kill at least every other summer because I'm outside frolicking in the garden so much, where I end up neglecting my house plants. Like, that's probably the bigger, drop in the bucket as it relates to waste and monies.